than a year, federal authorities have been investigating insurance fraud by people accused of intentionally ramming into 18-wheelers in order to file bogus insurance claims. Now, it's a scam that hits all Louisiana motorists with higher insurance rates. An investigative reporter Mike Perlstein's Highway Robbery series has been following the case from the beginning. Mike has now chronicled a string of indictments and guilty pleas, but he now reports the probe is at a critical point, potentially exploding. And it's one of the largest cases of its kind.
Dozens of staged accidents, scores of hustlers, millions of dollars paid to settle fraudulent lawsuits with fake injury claims. And as a result, the entire state of Louisiana is suffering from some of the highest car insurance rates in the country.
It affects you and me and all of your listeners because we're all going to be paying more insurance as a result of these fraudulent claims.
Authorities say the scam involves people packing into a car, intentionally sideswiping an 18-wheeler, then claiming injuries in a lawsuit that usually ends in a settlement paid by insurance companies.
I have one word for you: it's outrageous.
The street-level organizers of the scheme, known as slammers, are the ones behind the wheel during the accident. After they ram their target, they jump out, putting someone else in the driver's seat.
It's almost a suicidal occupation to be a slammer, to slam yourself into an 18-wheeler.
Our investigative series into this scam, Highway Robbery, has now chronicled the indictment of 33 defendants by the U.S. Attorney's Office, leading to 11 guilty pleas and counting.
Every one of those pleas, you have to assume, are people that are cooperating with the government and sharing information.
Less than 3 weeks ago, the sprawling case reached a critical point. While several attorneys have been implicated anonymously in previous indictments, veteran accident attorney Daniel Patrick Keating became the first to be indicted.
As all attorneys do, Mr. Keating took an oath to uphold the United States Constitution and the laws of the state of Louisiana, but instead, he chose to violate those laws in his oath.
We identified Keating as a target when our series first aired a year ago. Now multiple sources tell us that Keating is cooperating with authorities. Further proof, he voluntarily gave up his law license. With Keating unmasked as the person listed as Attorney A in prior court documents, attention now turns to attorneys identified in the records as B through E.
All I can tell you is that the investigation is continuing on attorneys A, B, C, and so forth.
Former U.S. Attorney Harry Rosenberg says the case is unfolding in classic fashion. Indict the lower-level suspects, then work your way up to higher-profile targets.
It's just a classic approach by federal prosecutors to work their way up the ladder.
Suspects who cooperate early on usually get leniency at sentencing.
Those who come in early get the best deal because they have the ability to help the government.
And here's something else we can share. Multiple sources have told me that other professionals implicated have consulted with A-list criminal defense attorneys in case they're next.
I think most of them have, as they say, lawyered up and have retained defense counsel because they know the individuals who have been charged.
So that's an indication to me of being a little nervous, and rightfully so.
From previous stories in our series, we connected attorney Vanessa Mata and her fiancé, Sean Alfordish, to accident lawsuits that have been flagged as suspicious. The couple is again identified by code in this 9-person indictment from September. The accused ringleader, this man, Cornelius Garrison, linked to more than 50 fraudulent accidents, including one where Model settled his own claim for $650,000. In an alarming development, Garrison was murdered 4 days after he was named in the indictment, an unsolved killing that is now being looked at by the FBI.
It's unusual to see the FBI bring in a task force just on a single murder, and that's apparently what happened in the aftermath of Mr. Garrison's murder.
Garrison's indictment also refers to Alfordish as co-conspirator A, providing office space for Mata at his Kenner building. Alfordish is a disbarred attorney who served time in federal prison after being convicted in an unrelated fraud case. Court records show that other indicted suspects, including some who have pleaded guilty, were represented in accident claims by the King firm, located here on Canal Street. As the heat gets turned up, local FBI Chief Brian Vorndren issued this warning.
For the FBI, this is a warning to anybody who's out there that's involved in this scheme or any other schemes that we're looking and we're coming, and if you're involved in this or something similar, you may want to have some sleepless nights between now and a few months out.
Mike Perlstein, Eyewitness News.
An attorney for the King firm acknowledged representing some of the criminal defendants in accident suits, but said the firm, quote, worked hard to uncover the truth and took appropriate action. An attorney for Mata said he had nothing to add to his prior statement that his client is cooperating. We also called Mata's fiance, Sean Alpertish, but we have not received a response.